Howdy. Last week I was following the Ukraine war and I spotted a couple of things that raised my hackles. Firstly, I saw a clip of this businessman, a mercenary, and he was in a prison yard and he was giving terms and conditions to a bunch of prisoners on what they would expect if they joined his company on the front lines against the Ukrainians. The second clip that I saw was basically a picture of a group of men from the Donetsk peoples, whatever, and they were all clad in Russian fatigues, and in amongst them was this very short man. He was a midget, a dwarf. And for me, that raised a couple of very serious, interesting points. Firstly, with regards the mercenary in the prison yard, um, those prisoners are in prison for a reason. And when you go to prison, you have your rights stripped from you. So that means that the only person that can allow those prisoners outside or to change their terms and conditions would be a judge appointed by the government. So technically, that businessman has no place whatsoever in that prison. And yeah, you can't have a contract with a prisoner. Simple as that. The consequences of sending prisoners, lawbreakers out to the front lines are primarily on the commanding officer. As a commanding officer who looks at those men, he has to be in complete control of them at all times. And if those people go on to commit war crimes, then it falls on that particular commander who is ultimately responsible. Secondly, it regards the dwarf. Yes, he might be able to drive a vehicle, he might be able to shoot a weapon, but he will, if he finds himself, if that poor unfortunate soul finds himself on the front lines, he will find himself at a very severe disadvantage. And again, it's on the commanding officer to be responsible for putting that person's life in danger. There are laws against recruiting people who are physically incapable of being a soldier, and there's laws against recruiting people who are, how would you say, that are mentally vulnerable as well. They can't be sent to the lines. It's actually a crime. It's murder. It really is. You're putting them at a severe disadvantage to the rest of the units and the people that are fighting the wars. Here in Ireland, we have a very strong defence force who are very well trained, who are mentally and physically capable of doing the job on a day-by-day basis. We have the guards who are again highly trained and very capable at doing their job. And on top of that, we have the HSE, and they are very capable and well capable of handling whatever national emergencies that might come our way. However, if it ever became severe, if we found ourselves in a severe emergency, there are what's called the Emergency Powers Acts, and they require anybody between the ages of 18 up to 65 to get involved. From that point of view, young people between the ages of 18 and 25, there's well over a million of them. There has to be. There's well over hundreds of thousands of them. Okay. On top of that, you have the 35 to 55-year-old bracket. Again, you're talking high numbers there as well. And on top of that, from the 55s to the 65s, there's a very significant number of those people too. So what does that mean for a military enthusiast? Well, firstly, for a young person that hasn't been in the army or hasn't made it into the ranks of the guards or whatever, who may feel socially responsible to get involved, well, a hobby group such as this, or an interest group that covers military type activities like ham radio or driving or airsoft or things like that, it'd help them in that particular situation. As for those of us who are in the 35 to 35 to 55-year-old group, we're very busy paying taxes, raising families, things like that, but it is still incumbent on us to actually be available if something ever happened. And finally, Even though you might be feeling frail at 55 to 65, there's still place there, and there's still so much you can do to contribute in the case of an emergency in that particular situation. So yeah, I think I've really discovered another value there for a military enthusiast. The ability, it's important to be relevant, and it's important to be part of something, to be part of whatever comes our way in the next few years. That's all I have to say. Take care.